There's a kind of motherhood that doesn't come with a handbook, a title that feels fully yours, or even a clear place to stand. It's the role of a stepmom. And for many of us, it begins not with celebration, but with complexity. You love children who didn't come from you, while also stepping into an existing story that already has its own history, its own loyalties, and sometimes its own wounds. From the outside, blended families can look like a simple merging of people, but anyone living inside one knows it is anything but simple. It's a layered, emotional, and often invisible work that doesn't get acknowledged until something goes wrong. When I stepped into a blended family role, I quickly learned that love alone wasn't the issue. I could care deeply, I could show up, I could provide structure, meals, rides, consistency, even affection when it was accepted. But none of that guaranteed connection, and that was one of the hardest truths to sit with. You can be fully present and still feel like you're standing outside of the relationship you're trying to build. There is a unique kind of grief in loving children who may not be ready, willing, or able to fully receive you yet. And yet you stay. You stay in the silence, in the resistance, in the small moments that don't feel like progress at all, but somehow are. What makes this role even more complicated is the invisible comparison. Stepmoms often measure themselves against an unspoken standard, the biological connection. It can feel like there is a bond you're supposed to compete with, replace, or somehow replicate. But the truth is, you're not stepping into a role that can be duplicated. You are stepping into a space that has already been shaped by someone else's story, and that means your job is not to erase what came before, but to learn how to exist alongside it without losing yourself in the process. There were moments where I questioned whether I was doing anything right at all, when respect wasn't returned, when effort went unnoticed, when discipline was misunderstood, when love felt like it was being tested instead of received. And in those moments, I had to redefine what success even meant. Was success obedience? Affection? Acceptance? Or was it simply consistency? Showing up in a way that says, I'm still here, even when this is hard. Over time, I realized that much of stepmotherhood is not about visible reward. It's about invisible stability. It's about being a steady presence in a child's life, even when they don't yet have language for what that means. One of the hardest emotional tensions in blended families is learning to hold boundaries without closing your heart, to stay soft without becoming invisible, to care deeply without losing your identity in the process. There were seasons where I had to step back emotionally, not because I stopped caring, but because I had to protect my ability to keep caring long term. That balance is delicate. Too much distance and you feel disconnected from your own family. Too much closeness and you risk being emotionally overwhelmed by rejection or misunderstanding. And yet something powerful happens when you stay. Not perfectly, not always gracefully, but consistently. Over time, children begin to see patterns. They begin to recognize presence. They begin to trust stability even if they don't always express it. Blended families don't form through instant bonding. They form through repetition, through showing up after hard conversations, through staying calm in conflict, through continuing to care even when it isn't reciprocated in the way you hoped. Faith has also shaped how I understand this role, because there are moments where human validation doesn't come quickly enough to sustain you. You have to believe that what you're building still matters, even when it isn't being acknowledged. That love planted in hard soil is still love. That consistency still counts, even when it feels unseen. That healing in a family system often takes longer than what we want, but it is still possible. Being a stepmom has taught me that love is not always about being chosen first. It's about choosing to stay present anyway. It's about learning to release control over outcomes while still showing up with intention. It is about accepting that connection may come slowly, in fragments, over years instead of moments. And it's about believing that invisible work still shapes visible outcomes. So if there's one thing I would like people to understand about blended families, it's this. What looks like distance is often processing. What looks like rejection is often protection. And what looks like nothing happening is often the quiet beginning of something real forming underneath the surface. And the people doing that work, the stepmoms, the bonus parents, the ones standing in the in-between, are often carrying the most unseen kind of love there is.